Hey, Tom Judd on Global CE Day, and from CED here, and one of our really cool collaborators, Mario Forjaz Secca, grew up and did all this incredible work in Portugal, and now is spending this part of his life in Mozambique. So welcome, Mario, and tell us what's your job there, and what's it like to live in Mozambique?
Well, just a correction. I was born and I did grow up in Mozambique. I finished here my secondary school.
You told me that.
And it's only after that that I went to England to study physics at the age of 17. Until then, I was here living in Mozambique.
So welcome home.
So that's a country that I love because of that, because those 17 years in favor of independence. This was before
you and the lions running out there. Okay, cool.
So after studying physics in England and doing my PhD there, I went to Portugal and dedicated myself to medical physics. And in Portugal, through medical physics, I discovered biomedical engineering. And after biomedical engineering, I started working in hospitals. So I got the clinical engineering side of things. So not just the equipment itself, but actually equipment on clinical setting. And being involved with the Federation of Biomedical Engineering, part of the Administrative Council and chairman of the Working Group on Developing Countries for 12 years. I got really involved in the Federation. And after all that, I had the call from Mozambique. I had to come back. I had to use all my knowledge and give it back to the country that I grew up in, and which I believe it's my country. So I came here. And after some struggle, I did manage to get a job as medical physicist and clinical engineer at the Central Hospital of Maputo. In fact, it's in the radiology department, because I'm an MRI expert in terms of the research and clinical applications. But because of that, I got involved in the radiology department, but actually my involvement is quite broad, because it's not just in MRI. I'm involved in the whole thing, and the maintenance. I don't do the maintenance, but I check the overall maintenance and the equipment and the quality of the equipment. So it's been really fantastic to actually be in a hospital in Mozambique. The Central Hospital is actually the main hospital in Maputo, the whole of Mozambique, which is in the south. It's about 1,500 beds. It's just built in a very strange way, because it's a colonial inheritance, because it's a very wide block, and it's not built in height. Every department is in a separate little building. And to go from one to the other, you have to go outside, get the rain, and get back to the other one, because this is an old fear of contagion. But it is one of the best hospitals, the best best public hospital in Mozambique. And
so Mario,
there's a lot of good equipment there.
And so I'll recap. So born in Mozambique, studied in Europe and served in Europe, but felt a calling back there. Now you're in the key hospital in the country. You're the only clinical engineer and medical physicist perhaps in the country. 40 years ago, I found myself one of 3 clinical engineers in Florida, but you're the only guy, only person for the country. Now, I know you're really trying to expand, their horizons beyond yourself. You brought us in a collaborator that you're going to talk about here in a moment that's working with the Ministry of Health there. Tell us about yourself and Abu Bakar's work to try to develop a society of clinical engineering around the country.
Well, just one correction. I've been working at the Central Hospital for 3 years now, but last year they installed a radiotherapy unit for the first time in Mozambique. And for that radiotherapy unit, they have 2 medical physicists, but actually come from Portugal.
Okay.
One is actually from Colombia, I think, and the other from Portugal, which are there helping. But still, all the medical physicists that exist are actually linked directly to the Ministry of Health. There are 3 there, but not actually working in the hospital. Those are the 2 in the Central Hospital, but only for the past year working in the radiotherapy unit.
Mario, ever the modest one here, but keep going.
So, but with Abu Bakr Sumalji, is a friend and a colleague here. They're two brothers, two Sumalji brothers, and they actually trained for clinical engineering with Mladen Poluta in South Africa.
Which is just over the mountains there, Kruger Park.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can see
just over the crocodiles on the other side.
All right.
There's a crocodile river, which actually called like that because it's full of crocodiles on the border of Mozambique.
Don't swim there, got it.
Mozambique and South Africa. But so Abu Bakr and his brother, both Sumaljis, they were in training in Cape Town with Mladen. And they're great guys, a lot of potential. But once they got back, they actually been employed by the Ministry of Health. And sometimes the regions to do acquisitions, but overall general they work in infrastructures, which is very interesting, very positive, and very needed. And it's a good, one of the good roles that a clinical engineer can do in terms of infrastructures. But they don't have the direct contact with everyday hospitals, which is a pity in a way. It's good that they're doing that job, but it's a pity because then they're good people that we're not using for everyday work.
Well, I know you're helping to bridge that gap, but so are you guys identifying other people in clinical engineering roles across the country?
At the moment in Mozambique, there are several people there are quite a few people who did training as medical equipment maintenance. And that is a course that lasts for 3 years, but it starts at 10th grade. So before they finish school, 2 years before finishing school, they get to start that and they do an extra year afterwards. And there's some good people, some very interested people on this, but not the higher grade university level. So those people that we're trying to contact, and I think while we're talking with the Sumaljis, what is important now, as it happens in several countries, like in England, for instance, instead of having just a medical physicists society or a biomedical engineering, clinical engineering, maybe now because of the lack of critical mass, we should have a joint group to start with.
Sure.
The clinical engineers and biomedical engineers and medical physicists.
Yep.
And we're looking now, we've been talking recently, about a few weeks ago, that we really have to sit down, identify the people, see what we need to formally set up an association here in Mozambique, so we can set up and going. So with the idea later on of joining the Federation of Biomedical Engineering and formally the clinical engineering division as the Mozambican group.
Well, I know you've been working, so great to hear about that kind of society development work. I know you've been working with the Ministry of Health yourself, and you've seen some positive things and some other challenges. Tell us about that.
Well, one of the problems we have at the moment is the way they structured things, like our MRI system was not acquired by the hospital, was acquired by the Ministry of Health. And the Ministry of Health has a group that deals with the purchasing equipment, which is, no matter how efficiently or whatever they work, they actually somewhat distanced from the day-to-day workings of the hospitals. And sometimes what we find out is that the specifications they choose are not really the ones that the medical doctors would like to have. So that is a problem that happens in several countries. It's a miscommunication between those people who acquire the equipment, who are responsible for the acquisition, and the actual users, which the medical doctors.
And a gap that clinical engineers like yourself can help fill, and that you can train.
And that's where I believe that the clinical engineers can do a great job, because to bridge that gap and really help things. So first of all, unfortunately, Abu Bakr, the Sumaljis are not actually direct. They were some time ago, but they're not now, in the acquisition part of the Ministry of Health, which if they were, there would be. They actually involved one or two things. It's part of the infrastructure of the hospital. But in general equipment, if it's specific equipment, they're not there. And that's why we think hopefully in future we will change that.
Well, Mario, and so some concluding remarks from you. You've been in the whole business of groundbreaking, and I know connecting, the ministry to the hospitals, and getting it into the hospital culture, that the difference that clinical engineering can make. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, one of the things that we actually managed now, because of some of the complaints that we did for this MRI system, finally we got something which was not common here, is to get to acquire an equipment with a 4 to 5 year maintenance contract, which before the previous equipment had no maintenance contract. That's why it collapsed and it was destroyed. So, and new equipment is being thought about that. Try and ask for maintenance
Particularly
contract.
for high tech, like you're saying, like the MRI.
Exactly, yeah. It's extremely important. And make sure that when we ask order, we have a tender for an equipment, one thing we're trying to put now, and we're already managing to do that, they need to specify, once they have someone proposes to enter the tender, to say who's their training personnel. Not only that they will be responsible for the maintenance, but who's their maintenance personnel, what credibility, what credits they have, to make sure that we can get a good job. And are trying to convince everyone in the acquisition part that it's not just the cheapest equipment that is important. You have to make sure that the people who are maintaining the equipment have all the certifications and the abilities to do it properly. Otherwise, it just save money, but then it will cost a lot more in the end.
Well, Mario, we appreciate your courage to go back home, but to a hard place though, to slog through these kinds of issues to try to make a difference. And we appreciate your hard work. Any final sentence for us about Global CE Day?
Well, I'm glad with being part of this African group on biomedical engineering and clinical engineering in IFMBE. And that's me involved, and Abubakar Sumalji is also involved in it. So the idea is that by being part of a bigger group and getting more and more involved, I think we're in the beginning of a road to success, where we'll get more people aware of the importance of clinical engineering, get more people involved, and get people to hear us. Not only the medical doctors, but the people in the Ministry of Health and those who acquire equipment. And very important as well, the people who sell equipment here.
Yep. Well, I hear a lot of good credentialing challenges there, and maybe there's a new certification though, crocodile swimming. I don't know, but we'll see.
If you get to the other side, that you're alive, you're great.
That's right.
You do your job.
That's the final exam. Well, thank you for your time today, Mario. This is great.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Great to talk. Bye.